Welcome to Talking Pictures. My name is Christian Genzel. I'm a filmmaker and film journalist from Salzburg, Austria. Talking Pictures is a podcast series in which I talk to the people who made some of my favorite movies. Today's guest probably needs little introduction. Filmmaker Jan de Bont became famous as one of the most creative and exciting cinematographers of the 70s, 80s and 90s. He started out in the Netherlands, where he worked on Wim Verstappen's controversial film Blue Movie, and quickly became known for his collaborations with director Paul Verhoeven on movies like Turkish Delight, KEETJE, TIPPEL and The Fourth Man. He continued working with Verhoeven in America on Flesh and Blood and Basic Instinct, and became a sought-after DP for blockbusters like Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, Lethal Weapon 3 and FLATLINERS. But Jan de Bont is also a very talented and unique director in his own right. He made his 1994 directorial debut with the wonderfully tense action thriller Speed, which he quickly followed up with the amazing adventure disaster movie Twister, which was written by Michael Crichton and his wife and produced by Steven Spielberg. He also made the much-maligned sequel Speed 2, which is actually a very fun action thriller if taken on its own terms. He directed the Spielberg-produced horror movie The Haunting, which features one of the greatest horror houses in recent horror history, and the video game movie Tomb Raider 2, which features numerous inventive action sequences. I spoke with Jan de Bont about the making of Twister and his philosophies of creating realism on screen. Our conversation took place in connection with a video featurette I produced for a 25th anniversary re-release of Twister for a German label called Turbine, who created a beautiful media book issue of the film with a new Dolby Atmos and Auro 3D soundtrack. We also talked about Jan's casting choices, his admiration of Stanley Kubrick's movies, and much more. Please forgive a couple of moments where the sound quality isn't ideal, but I feel the conversation is definitely insightful and also entertaining enough to ignore a few background noises. If you enjoy my conversation with Jan de Bont, please visit www.talkingpicturespodcast.com to check out our other interviews and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Also, if you speak German, make sure to visit www.lichtspielplatz.at and check out episode number 50, which features an in-depth discussion of Twister in German. So with no further ado, here's Talking Pictures with Maestro Jan de Bont. It's been 25 years since Twister came out, so I'm curious, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you look back a quarter of a century?
First of all, I can't believe it's already that long ago. It's shocking always because it feels like you're making a movie. It's such an intense work, and it stays with you for quite a long time. So I personally don't feel it's that long, but I heard it also from Universal and from Paramount, who is actually going to re-release it as well. The same, I guess, issue there, and it's a big thing in a way that Twister has gotten so much fans in a way, because this summer there were like a lot of newspapers had, because of the pandemic, they had those virtual film festivals in which the viewers could select what was the best movie of each particular year, and they show every week the next year. So of that particular year, there was in New York, in Chicago did it, LA Times did it. And they were very successful. There's like a couple 100,000 people watching each time. So Twister was voted number 1 in New York, and number 2 in LA, and number 1 in Chicago, which I was totally surprised by. And it's like, I'm pleasantly surprised, I have to say. And that it still brought good memories to people, and that they all came to see it again, or went to see, either on the screens, or they also had even screenings in certain places, exterior screenings, outdoor. Mm-hmm. That was really quite amazing to really, it's a good feeling that it's still there, that it's still actual and still relates to the world we live in.
Why do you think the film has stood the test of time? Why does it have such longevity?
I think because it is something that we're still dealing with nonstop, and now especially as climate change has more and more impacts on the world, not just in the United States, and in many different forms. But the amounts of twisters and tornado, the level of it has increased every year. The damage also has increased every year too, and the same right now with there's the hurricanes. They have. It's the most busiest season this year ever recorded. which is just stunning. And there's 5 different hurricanes on the way to the United States on the East Coast. 5 has only happened once before in 1820 or so. So it is as climate change has become more meaningful, and all we hope now, of course, is that politicians react to it, and industry especially reacts to it. And in that regard, it is. I think, has a still meaningful voice, that movie. It's like, how can we get more information, to prevent as much damage as possible? And it is a still very relevant subject matter, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, what I find interesting about Twister is that, theoretically, it's a disaster movie.
Yeah, unfortunately, it falls very quickly in those categories. There's only a limited amount of categories. Oh, okay, then it says a lot of accidents have disaster, a lot of accidents that's disaster movie, earthquakes disaster movie. It falls immediate, and there's not enough categories to justify actually where they should go. And it's kind of silly, but it is unfortunately a film thing.
Yeah, I feel it's more of an adventure type of story, and in a sense a monster movie. Would you agree?
I totally agree with that. It's definitely an adventure movie, and it's definitely a monster movie in a way, because it is like there's ultimately nothing is bigger and more dangerous than the power of nature. Nobody can fight that, and nobody knows what to do against it. It is so overwhelmingly intrusive in our lives, and even every year more so, that it has a more and more a face that we recognize, and it's not a face we like. It's really a monster face, and it looks like that too. And that was a little bit the whole idea behind it. I never wanted to make a disaster movie, because that's, to me, is not necessarily so much fun. It is really about showing the incredible power of nature and how incredible limited we are as human beings to deal with that. So in that regard, yeah, I think it is definitely a monster movie. It's not Godzilla. Don't mistake me. Although I love Godzilla movies, but it is in a way it has the same idea a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is a kind of adventure movie where people actually seek out the danger they're encountering. Because I was thinking of other disaster movies, and I can think of no other disaster movie where the characters are actually looking for that type of danger. It's like having the towering inferno, and not talking about the people inside the building, but people outside who are actually looking for buildings that are on fire.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, actually. Yeah, but it's true. But that those tornado chasers, as they are called, they do exist. Because I have to say that it is incredibly overwhelming if you actually see it happen. I was lucky that we are lucky in a way. Maybe, lucky for me, not so lucky for the people who were involved, is that to see how and this was a relatively small twister, how it can change a street within seconds. It happens so fast. It is like all those houses are there, and a minute later it's all gone, completely gone. It's like as if high-speed bulldozers come at you and just without any thought just plow it over and make it disappear. It is stunning. And it's really also what happens in the sky is like when you see that cloud coming at you, and it is always coming straight at you. It's really like, and you don't know how to escape. Where you go with a real monster. You go inside a building, you run away, you go underwater. None of that would matter for this monster. There's no escape possible. Instead, if you can prevent to be there and get warned in advance and get the hell out of there. But seeing it and hear the sound of it, it is really hard to make it come across how that feels. And when we were doing the soundtrack, we made all kinds of tests how it would resemble the sound I heard, and it is kind of amazing. We use sounds like buildings destroyed, but also lion roars, trains. A mixture of hundreds and hundreds of different sounds, because that's actually what it sounds like. It is a mismatch of thousands of sounds that are coming at you at a super loud level. That is actually quite an amazing view. So I can understand why people want to see it. There is something to it, like, like you also want to see the biggest wave and the biggest shark. You would love to see the biggest shark, and things like that. And it is, and then of course it creates so much adrenaline in you. If you sit in one of those chase cars, and those guys have a little bit of experience, but they never know exactly where the tornado is going to go. But if it comes at you and there's no side roads left or right, and suddenly it changes its direction, you freak out, and they're trying to back up as fast as they can and turn around and try to outrun it. And that's probably the only thing you can do. And you can outrun it in a car if you are smart enough how to do it. But you have to be totally experienced. But it is a monster that comes at you. There's no doubt about it.
I think there's something very humbling about encountering a force of nature like this.
Exactly. And that is a little bit what I felt that experienced. And that's the whole idea I wanted to come across for the viewer, is that it is like you feel suddenly so little and so small in this world, and with so little impact. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it just, comes at you. And then, and the good thing with Twisters is one solution that might help you to survive. It doesn't stop the destruction. If you can go underground and if it's covered. If you can do that, then you have the best chance to survive. And we brought it up many times in the movie to teach people a little bit also how you could survive it. But quite often there's not even time for that, because quite often it's in the night, middle of the night, and when the situation is most suited, and it comes out of nowhere, and it's almost immediately there. It is awe-inspiring, and it is frightening, and it is really, you feel like kind of completely like an ant compared to that gigantic storm.
I think that you tried very much to recreate that kind of feeling and awe also on set for the actors, that they would have to sort of experience that. I'm sure you're familiar with this. I found an interview with Bill Paxton where he said he didn't act in Twister, he survived Twister.
Yeah, but I love Bill Paxton, so and he's kind of right, I think. But the way I saw that movie is like, quite often actors always have to respond to things they've never seen, because they're shot off camera, they're never there, and they never really know what it really means to be close to it. And of course, we cannot put actors in the way of a tornado or a twister. That would be, no film company or insurance company would ever allow us to do that. But so I really wanted them to feel what the power of what is at least some part of the power of of that twister is. And we brought in massive wind machines. I mean, we had two huge Boeing 747 engines mounted on huge tractor trailers that they were some of the wind makers, and you cannot stand up in that. I can guarantee you that. And also then this rows of this gigantic propeller wind machines as well. At the same time, debris has been thrown in front of those wind machines, so that flies at you, because that is the big thing. It's not like standing in a window, like trying to survive. You could not stand upright anyway. But if you have to really, it is getting even a piece of grass and it flies at that speed in your face hurts, really hurts. So I wanted to get a sense that they knew what they were getting into, and that I really wanted them to really respond to what they feel and see, and not acting. I really didn't want, because acting to that is always over the top. It's always too much, or sometimes it doesn't happen at all, and then it becomes like bland. I wanted to get a real sense of having those actors be participating a little bit in the event itself, and not just and acting almost immediately. The moment you turn those wind machines on, and paper and little debris, very soft debris, but goes into those wind machines, it flies at you, and suddenly you can't see, and you really don't even know where you're going. It is an amazing experience. I always do it first myself to make sure it's not dangerous, but it is very impactful. And I mean, for instance, like the scene where Bill Paxton is in that hailstorm going up a hill towards the tornado, that is real hail. See, that is not, there's no visual effects hail, because many filmmakers would go to visual effects immediately. No, this is real hail. We had 2 tractor trailers, gigantic, with massive blocks of ice driving in front of them, with wind machines on the truck as well. And it goes to grinders and spit it out and then land on the car at speed. So, and that, I mean, I made him very aware that, I didn't do that with Helen, of course. I didn't want her, because Bill is a little bit, can respond a little quicker, and he loves the danger. He wants to really feel it. And at one point, of course, those machines are not fine-tuned grinders. Sometimes bigger pieces of hail come out. And there was and that's actually in the movie, where he gets hit by a bigger piece of ice, and if it's like you have a rock thrown at you at high speed, which is really. So he got a little injured, but he said, "No, don't stop, keep going." Because the adrenaline it creates in the actors, you cannot replace that. You cannot act that. It's a real thing, and that's why, to me, that movie is so effective, because we didn't rely only on visual effects. Most of it was special effects, and when they drive on the road together, and things fall, those combiners, those big, when they fall from the sky, that is not visual effect. These are real combiners hanging from helicopters, falling from the sky onto the road, but never knowing exactly where they go. So, of course, we had also a stunt driver with us, and who could take over and quickly respond. But we also, because you cannot do it many times, so you also have cameras on the actors at the same time to really see both, because then it works. If you separate it, you never get the right response. And so it was like to see these massive machines, boom, and then boom, and boom, and that is like, I mean, even being there for the whole crew, there's like, wow, this is really amazing, And that happens in real life, of course, too. It's not like most of the scenes that are in the film are based on things I've seen in documentary footage of those tornado chases, and there's lots of it. And a lot of it is not so interesting, but there are some amazing pieces. Flying Cows is from that one of those documentaries where a flying cow came through image like for a split second. I said, "Oh my God, we have to have that." And this was. And then it came back again. So we make it into a little bit more of a scene, but these are all real events. These are not fantasy events. These are actual scenes that have happened. Rolling House has happened. Seen it myself on documentary footage, and it's and if you can do this with real effects, the effect, the response that people have, the viewer can see that. They know there's a complete different emotion on the screen when it's a visual effect or when it's a special digital effect. When it's a special digital effect, you automatically make a step back as the audience, because it can never be real. It's too fantastical, or it is also completely different dimensional difference between the flat digital effects and the more 3D effects on camera. And that is those visual effects visual effects that starts to become such an important part of the movie that I think they made the audience combine it's a real storm. They get now a much better sense that this was a real storm, and of course the tornadoes are the twisters that we couldn't really. Thus, you cannot. We have a lot of footage from second unit in it that was storm chasing at the same time. There's a crew with 2 crews, and they ran all over the state, Arizona and Nebraska, where it takes place and where they always tend to happen. And they found they were able to get some real shots, but they had real chases with them and knew what to do. And they had one from the NOAA, the National organization that tracks tornadoes and scientists that really knew what to expect. And so, but those things, the real shots that they have in the movie, are always better than the shots you do digitally later. No matter that they look good, and they're again kind of copying as much as possible what they did look like on the different size tomatoes, like a F1 till an F4 and or an F5 even. It is all based on real things. So we didn't make it up. And by that, it becomes more real, you know. It's quite amazing that how the viewer, when we had the first screening, they physically reacted to the movie, because they get a sense this is like, oh my God, this is like, you know, this is not just like you said, a disaster movie. They really felt the power of those tornadoes can have.
Yeah, I also think the realism that you're going for is the reason why the film is so exciting and still is so exciting. Also, I know that on some of your audio commentaries, for example, you talk about how you always try to get the actors to do certain stunts so that you can connect them to what is happening.
That is actually, and I've done that always in my life, even for other directors. And when they have a stunt, there's such a set system in Hollywood that actors should never be in close proximity to a stunt. But to me, it's exactly that makes it real, that you get a sense, because the reaction of an actor when they're in a car driven by a stuntman that you can see, and going to it and getting in an accident and being able to film them at the same time as the stunt is happening, you can never get. They cannot act that. It's impossible. No actor can do that. And the danger is that, you know, the studio was really, really worried about it, that an accident might happen. And we had a lot of security people on the set, from safety people from the studio. But the actors became aware how well it worked. They said they could have never done this, even because that split second of an accident happening, or a tanker trailer falling from the sky and exploding, that is so real. And that was also a real effect, by the way. It's not a stunt, a digital effect. And they felt the physicality of it. You cannot tell an actor how to do that. You cannot explain it even. And on the regular type of action movies, it's always you do this, and with the double, and then you cut back to the actor, like as if he's in another world. And he's in another world because he was never there, and he never can really respond. He never felt the adrenaline. He never felt that energy and the air pressure that comes towards you. And all those things will happen, you know, give for a kind of response that is kind of a really unusual and very real. And for instance, like in Speed, like Keanu, really a lot of actors don't like to do their stunts because it's dangerous. I don't want to hurt my face. I don't want to get any scratches on my arms. Although in real life, they always happen to them. You know, where it happens, you can get scratches many different ways. But that's not the point. The point is a little bit is that once I was taught him into doing it, and I used very low level effects and I also showed it to them first. That's the big thing too for an actor. So when Keanu didn't want to jump, for instance, from the Jaguar to the bus, I did it first myself. And I'm kind of I'm not a stuntman. I'm not very physically gifted and in the way of athletic. And to do that at speed, it looks dangerous. See, my gift is I can make it look dangerous, although in fact it really isn't as dangerous as it seems to be. Like stepping from two cars, from one car to the other car at speed, it's almost like stepping. You just don't look at the ground, you know, because the distance remains the same. It's only like 3 feet. But if you focus your eye focus on the ground, then you can do it. So I taught them how to really refocus on the place they're going. Do not look at the road passing by below it, because then you might, if non-experienced, you might freak out a little bit. But then, so what happened then, of course, in several movies is that when it's finished and it's done and it looks great, it's like, wow, that was great. I'll do it again. And they said, no, you don't have to do it again. This was really good, you know. And so then they started. Some of them, especially with Bill Paxton and but also quite a few other actors, they kind of understood why I'd asked them to do it, and always, you know, with safety in mind. But it is they understood why they cannot act out. Because they felt it happened to them. They felt it happened. The acting came from inside, from their physical mind, their body, and there's nothing they could do to stop it even. And that's the moment that makes those connectors things. So if you go from in the camera, look forward and see something, and you pan to the actor, and you really, that's a real reaction. That's non-actable, and therefore so much more effective. And I always try to do it. This movie's just Paul Verhoeven too. I always, I got a lot of freedom working with him, and he always trusted me in how to do shots. And he always, even in dialogue, quite often the reaction of a person is more important than the person as a dialogue. So I always, on my own feeling, intuition, I went to the other side or back and forth, and we never made other cuts. And it worked so well because the response was actually more telling than the actual saying of the dialogue. And that is something I've kind of tried to do my whole life, even in other movies like Black Rain and things like that, as a cinematographer, and Hunt for October. It's a similar kind of sense. You always see that camera want to do that, and especially also in Hunt for October, you can see, because it's a really tiny place. I mean, like, it's basic. The Hunt for October is like being caught in a place where you cannot escape from, and that pressure to really make it come across, you have to feel that it is small. You have to feel that it's the actual size of a submarine. You have to feel that people, passing each other almost have to touch each other. You have to feel that the reactions are physical. If somebody starts sweating, you're really next to him. And all that kind of stuff is, to me, tells more, is to help to tell the story much better than any studio acting or so. It's like the method acting is a different sense of acting altogether. It's like it becomes actually more acting. I mean, if you look at all those method actor movies where it's really intense, that is real acting. That is like, I'm a total director that's against method acting. I think it's so in the way of the movie, and you start and the whispering and the whimpering. What the hell is he saying? You can't hear it, the actor, and it drives me crazy. I really want to see the eyes, and I think if a viewer cannot see the actor's eyes, knows that the response and the reality and the response to the content of the scene comes through the eyes, and but if you have always like your head like like the James Dean said, it's like, really, I mean, they're nice movies, don't misunderstand me, but it's totally not. It's not that I would think is Oscar worthy, but who knows? Everybody has different opinions.
No, I see what you mean. I think that the what you describe is the effect is sort of an emotional realism, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
And I find that in your movies a lot, just the little details, like in Speed, you have that moment where Keanu asks Sandra Bullock, "Are you okay?" And she says, "No." And there's another moment like that in Twister. Again, Bill Paxton asks, "Are you okay?" And she says, "No, I'm not okay. This is not okay." And I kind of feel this is an emotional realism, because I never see people in those kinds of movies react the way that normal people would react. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean, and I think you're absolutely right. That was the whole point, because when normally in a movie, when somebody asks, "How are you doing?" and then you get a whole long response about how they are doing, but not how they're really feeling and what's going through their mind. And there's always either an immediate anger, an immediate fear, immediate emotion that is totally lacking in those responses. So there's things that are on purpose to exactly show that, no, I'm not goddamn okay. I mean, like, really, that's how Helen responded, and that was the exact thing. And if you, because about having done a lot of the stunts herself as well, and being so much involved in all the physicality of it all, see, no, this is not okay. This is really, and as an actor, I think when you never went to any of those real emotions that the counterpart talks about, it is it's always an acting, a very narrow, focused, thought about response. And I don't like about thought about response. They have to be immediate and they have to be feel real. And there has to always be a touch of emotion in it.
I think the idea of realism also ties in with your casting, which I find interesting. I mean, Twister is a case in point with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, who are not your typical Hollywood leading men or women, but also Keanu and Sandra or Lily Taylor in The Haunting.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them are very down-to-earth people in a way.
I think I'm glad you mentioned that, because it has been in all these movies an incredible fight to. It would have been, for instance, like in Speed, there was they wanted Julia Roberts instead of Sandra. They wanted, and I think, oh my God, can you imagine Julia Roberts driving a bus? I never believed that in 100 years. I mean, she's a nice lady, and I worked with her, but that's a nice actress, but not for this. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a person who you could believe would actually drive the bus on a regular basis, and for instance, all the extras in that bus, I don't know if you're aware of that, they were all cast from real bus-going people. Like, so they go to work every day and they go back. And so they all know what it is to sit on a bus, how boring it is, but also how they do things that they would do themselves on a bus. So they read, or they fall asleep, and they read, or they're annoyed by somebody next door. All their responses are so normal, and the good thing is that because they have sat on the bus so many times, they didn't mind that they had to sit in this bus 8 or 10 hours a day for filming. They were used to it, to a way. So all their responses are so natural. And then if this would be like just regular extras you hire from a company, it would have never worked. They would be like, when is lunchtime? When is this? Those people on the bus, they bring it their own. They always have something to snack with them. All of them from their own home. They bring it from their homes. They don't wait for the caterer. No, they have it. So they have their own little things, and it is so great. It makes it so much more interesting. And Keanu, of course, too. There was like Keanu Reeves as an action hero. He had never done anything even close to that, and it worked out perfect. But you have to. The key thing for me to make that work is to have him get physically involved in the making of the movie and not just have stunt doubles take over. And then he could forget about the actor, because Keanu tend to be a heavy-handed actor sometimes. He always quotes Shakespeare on the set nonstop, which is so far away from Speed and so far away. It's like it's like making static statements and there was nothing static on Speed. It was always moving and always, there's no stopping anywhere. So you cannot make those dramatic conversations with another character in a movie in that manner. So by having him actually do things, I was able to hold him back from becoming this kind of a, what he really wanted. That is his dream, and listen, good for him if he can do it. But it wasn't good for the movie. But I knew that if I was able to get him to like it, then I think I could get there. And it happened, thank God. He did hang upside down on the cable. He did all those things, and he realized also that it was better. That's a good thing that in and at the end, when it's all over, there are, of course, days they hated like hell because, like the day with the hail, for instance, or so. But Bill Paxton was never so proud of that day, too, at the same time. He told me so many times, it felt so good. I really, and it felt so good because he experienced it, He didn't have to act. He really felt the physicality of it all. And it's great. And so the casting is like really important. And have been fights almost in all those movies. Lily Taylor for Hanukkah, they wanted also, they all want movie stars. Now you know that. That's how it works. And she was perfect for that part. She was completely that person. And I loved her. And she was really, and she did everything I asked her and was totally, she's totally open. And she's very free-spirited. as she's been a stage actress too, she has a lot of it, but she was totally willing to forget all that. And that's key. That's really important, and it's, casting is really, really important. And I really, the producers and the studio always want to go on the heavy side, and I would like to take it way back. And I like more like people you can believe that they are the people who they're supposed to be. But it's an important thing, and it has worked in those movies. So I'm happy that it worked, and that ultimately the studio said, okay, it worked. But they really would have loved Julia Roberts, of course, because they could sell it better, or after Die Hard, Bruce was like always like, oh, you have to have him. No, he's totally not the right person for this. I wouldn't believe it for a second, and things like that. So it is interesting to see how they finally let you do it if you take enormous amount of time to convince them that they are the right person. But that's a big battle, there always is and probably always will be.
Yeah, and Twister has a lot of very good actors in the supporting cast too. I mean, Jeremy Davies and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Alan Ruck and Todd Field and
exactly. And they were all, and always this the casting, Risa Bramer, who's she likes. I mean, and she liked it, the fact that I wanted people who I actually felt could do this, could be a storm chaser, could be, and would behave like that, and a little rowdy and a little, and it was so much. They all loved it. They became their own. They became a team. It's really, they were joking always together and roughing things up, and it's like each time when I see those scenes back, I'm really proud that I was able to get them all. And Philip Seymour Hoffman was the last one we casted, because we were, about to move to Oklahoma, and we still hadn't found them. And then Risa brought in this guy, little droopy. I felt like he just came out of bed and after a rough night. And he was like, when the moment I saw him, I instantly believed, that's it. That is the one I want. And then we started talking, and he was extremely nice to work with. He totally, was believed in it, and it's great. Now that's a little bit like the same in a way in the cast in the bus, the extras there. They were, of course, a lot more than extras, but they were all very talented actors. The whole team.
One of the actresses in Twister is somebody who I think never gets the appreciation that she deserves, which is Jamie Gertz as Melissa, because I think hers is the most difficult role. I mean, she's sort of the audience, but she's always sort of the joke is always on her in a way.
Exactly. So. Yeah. No, but I was, I loved her. We became good friends in the movie because she understood what her role had to be and how important it was. And to get that a little bit, because she's not an actress who would go, tornado chasing, that's for sure. She has a family and kids, and she was actually even pregnant at the time. I mean, early stage still, but still, she was also very impressed that if you are actually not in the studio, but if you're actually on a real set, in the real country, in the real area where those things take place, and if you have seen some of the damage that has been done, but you can see that everywhere there, and then with all those machines, those big wheel machines, it became like it started to get to her, and she started to understand that this is not what she wants, So it's like, and that is exactly what the role she had to play. It's like a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit of a relief at times. I mean, she has to be, her part is lighter at times, but at the same time, it's like you said, it's the most difficult part, because she would love to have been, of course, the same like the other guys, get excited about it, but that wasn't her part, and she was just perfect to play Melissa. Kind of a little felt out of place, that is the thing. She really felt out of place. I mean, that's what she had to play, of course, but she felt out of place with that other cast, So I casted her against that group of team members, which are so unlike her. And that made it work. That's all those rough guys, and they all dressed like a little bit like slobs, and she was always dressed neat and businesslike. And no, I think I'm glad that you mentioned her name, because she's a really amazing actress, by the way. She's really, and I think she's, like you said, she's definitely was underrated. And so, I mean, she, in reviews at the time, her name hardly ever came up, and it's you cannot tell critics what to write about, but it is nice to see when they actually recognize her contribution.
I sort of drew a comparison then later on with the Theo character in The Haunting with Catherine Zeta-Jones, and I like the fact that in both cases how you handle these characters, because they could both be very stuck-up characters and very off-putting people. I mean, that's a type of person that often in films is basically the butt of a joke. But here they are very human characters, and they allow us to see a more, a different side of these people, I think.
Yeah, when I casted her and when I saw her, and she's such an outgoing person and so lively, and I thought that I have to use that. I have to use how she is a little bit, and there's always a sparkle in her eyes. There's always, and so they were complete opposites, but she didn't overplay it. So she did it like she knew when to stop and when to hold it back a little bit. And yeah, I mean, they are, again, that is a matter of, those two were so good together. They're kind of drawn to each other, but at the same time, they're night and day as well. And she's Irish, and she was a party, she loved to party because her brothers were there with her, and they traveled with her. And she behaved like a happy, party-loving Irish girl. and that was so perfect for the movie, even though they had sometimes long nights with the brothers, I mean, from cafe to cafe, but in a way it was really good for her, because it kept her a little bit in that role better. It was easier for her to have her brothers there and to really stay who she was, because they made her stay who she, because they know her. They know she cannot she cannot fake against with her brothers there. So it's kind of nice to really have her supported in a way by, everybody said, why do you have to bring the brothers here? It's always like, no, it's going to be good. It's good that she feels safe around them, and that there's nobody is really trying to use her in a way that who she isn't. And that wasn't my plan, of course, but I think those brothers there made it much easier for me.
I think a lot of your female characters are very resilient people, and I found an interview where you say that actresses are gutsier than actors. So I was wondering if you're, I don't know if you feel a special connection to your female characters.
I worked on a lot of other movies before as a cinematographer, and I worked on a lot of movies where it was always men's movies. I mean, in a way that a woman was hardly ever allowed to get the same amount of screen time as a known or star actor. And in my experience, they were always the better actress. They were the better person on the set. And I thought that has to change, And I'm sure you know this, like there have been some big stars in Hollywood history, but the male stars are 10 times, 100 times bigger in numbers and larger numbers than the female stars. And I feel like women, especially women who have a family life and who have kids, they are so more used to learn to live and work in reality, because kids are tough to deal with. And to me, it's always amazing, and how they basically also, when, for instance, they have long hours, it's the women who never complain. It's always the men that complain, and that is kind of so remarkably strange to me. How can that be? How can women always portrayed as the softer version, while in reality they are the stronger, the smarter quite often, and especially in actors' personality and individuality. But I think that there are hundreds and hundreds of actresses that are much better than any male actor. I make this, and I make it regularly, and I really, because I also mean it. I just have seen so much in my life and so many movies that I know it's true, and it's always. I personally always are drawn to them more than I'm drawn to the lead actor, no matter how big a story is. And as I can see, they put much more effort in getting the character right and getting the tiny little things right. They talk to me, maybe I should do it. And there's so much more. They also use their intuition much better. They are much more better control of their emotions as well. Even with males, I don't want to generalize it too much, but if the response in male actors always tend to be over the top. I mean, it's always bigger than life, and that is actresses are much more able to have a much more controlled, but still deeper felt process of emoting than males. But males are big gestures, angry, and with women, it's like they can do it with their eyes. They don't have to do in the small expression or just looking away. It's like it says more than all the big swearing and screaming. Quite often, that has been going on unfortunately for a long time, is actors who start to act in a really loud voice. There's nothing that I hate more. It is, to me, also, it only shows incompetence. And you've seen it in God knows how many movies. And it totally turns me off so much. And I think it's really a sign is that they are out of control and not in control. And that an actress would never do that. I would never have those brutal responses that male actors tend to have, especially bigger stars. And I mean, for instance, I don't want to, but he's a clear example. Is Al Pacino. He was a really good actor in the beginning, and as his career progressed, and he wanted to prove himself more, his voice got louder and louder and louder, and then became almost all screaming. And screaming is not telling a story. It tells only one story, that you're out of control, basically. And so it doesn't tell the story that is in the script or that has to influence people around you. People don't get impressed by screaming. People never do, never did, and will never happen. They're just like annoyed by it. And I don't understand. And there's a lot of films that it still happens. And to me, when the moment I see, and also in TV series, especially TV, then they start screaming loudly or they're yelling, and it means immediately to me that it's a warning sign. It's out of control. That person cannot act. That's really what it basically tells. I'm sorry I'm so outspoken, but that's how I feel, and I still feel so.
I get that same reaction when I go to the theater, like the stage play.
Yeah.
Every stage play, there's a moment where the actors have to yell at the top of their lungs.
Yeah.
And I always hate that, because I know that it's not something that these people would do. It's just something that they have to. It's a show-off moment, basically.
Exactly. It is all it is. It's a show-off moment. But it's a macho. It's all about machoism, and they think it portrays strengths. To me, it only portrays weakness, and when it's so loud, I get taken out of the movie, out of a play, out of anything, it doesn't work. It's always weakness.
Mm. And now one other thing I'd like to talk about is, which is, that's a huge reference, of course, in Twister, but also in all of the other movies, your love of Stanley Kubrick. I don't know if you noticed, but the cup that I have that's from The Shining.
Oh, yeah, The Shining.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, yeah. I try to do that, and I even snuck it into other movies as well. That and a little thing that I would know, and maybe the director would see it, and I like a book that's clearly about him or an image or so. But yeah, I always was, and on speed, I just told the studio, I really want, when the bus finally comes out of the ground, I want to stop in front of the Chinese theater, like, the most recognizable movie theater in the United States. And I want 2001 to play there. And he said, "Oh, it will never happen." And they released that movie. It never happen. We'll never get permission. Never. And actually, I'm in touch with him. I told him how big a fan I was of his movies, and we got to talk. And he said, "Okay, sure, go ahead." And then the studio said, "No, they cannot say, yeah, it's true. You call him and he will tell you." And they did. And so because they said they wanted to have like an action movie on set. I said, no. It has to be something very the opposite, like distracting. It cannot be about the same subject matter. And I love that movie, and it has to be there. And so, and then from then on, he got the Shining and Twister was no problem. I got, "Oh, of course, I love speed. Do you have to do it?" And so he was really very supportive, and I always have something in there somewhere. If you it's more than one scene. There's always also little other things in the background if you look closely. And yeah, I think he's an incredible, strong individualist, and he made the movies that he wanted to make, and there's it's such a personal and so imaginative and always held back, you don't see screaming in his movies, by the way, apart from maybe in Spartacus or so, but he had to take that over, so that doesn't really count as much, but now it's always like really controlled, and he did something that I could never do. He makes so many takes each time to get this one thing that's in his head that he's always looked for. When he makes a movie, image is already in his head. And that, to me, as an actor, I know how many times can you do the same line over and over and over again. But and then I talked to other people in the crew, and he said, and the editor also, he said, ultimately, it still always ends to be one of the first or second takes that he uses in the end. But he was trying to get something extra out of the actor or something, or he wanted to just exhaust the actor, and maybe after all that, it might come naturally out of him. So he really wanted to. I was so funny when he said that, and I said, "Oh, cool." But yes, I'm a really huge fan of his, and still am. So.
It's interesting because, Kubrick is also a very visual director, somebody who's very
Absolutely.
interesting to look at, and your films or your work also as a DP is too. But other than that, your films are complete opposites, I think.
Complete opposite. Yeah. No, they are complete opposites. No, but that doesn't mean that I cannot like the opposites either. I love these movies, and there's also something in it that really that touches me emotionally in his movies, and he has a slow build to it, and for me it's more immediate all the time, but then when it gets there, it's really meaningful, and so it is. He gets you in a different way, and I think that's really great too, if you can do it. He takes the time, it's like really, he's not worried about screen time too much, which is great.
It's interesting that you say it touches you emotionally, because I feel the same, and I always get into discussions with people who say that Stanley Kubrick is such a cold director, such a distant director, and I never felt that.
No. Now he gets you. Now, absolutely not. He's a very emotional. There's the scenes of so much emotional power in his movies, and. It depends. You have to be kind of a little bit prepared for it, because it's going to come, and you have to see it. But if you only see, let's say, you see it only as slow editing, then you might not see that moment. You might just close it. It might bypass you. But to me, they are some of the most amazing scenes, the powerful scenes in movie making, and that is, I think, one of his strengths, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely, like you say, a visual director. His cameraman, he could do it. He could have all done it himself, and he's so involved in every little detail in the camera, the lenses, the this, the that, the effects, everything is goes through him. And I mean, and he, for instance, he did that Barry Lyndon movie, and he wanted to shoot at real low light levels. So they worked on lenses, and they looked around the world forever to find us 0.9 and 1.1 lenses for anamorphic, which don't exist. It's normally like 3-4 stops darker, and it worked. But he had one lens made as well, and that is so great. That to me is like, because that to him it was like, if I cannot make it look real and that it is lit by those candles and those fireplaces, then I should not make the movie. He was that completely focused on it, and when you see it, it's super effective. I mean, you really get a sense that is what they saw, that's what it looked like, and you get much more. You're more drawn in that society at the time by using a lens that can, without any additional lighting, and the only additional lighting that there was more candles next to the lens. So it's like really. So it was. I thought it was brilliant. Really, really, very gutsy.
Yeah, very bold choice and.
Yeah,
his movies are full of bold choices, I think.
Exactly.
Speaking of bold choices, I always found it a very bold choice to put The Shining on a drive-in theater screen and then sort of have it destroyed by sort of your movie.
Yeah, but I was a little worried about it, but at the same time, I told him that it was the exact right movie to have there, so that the people in the movie were watching it would already be in a mindset of coming fear. And then I wanted to break up that fear pretty violently by having the screen split apart and the monster comes right at the lens. And if you could stop the thing, you can really see at the last moment is like a full close-up of Jack Nicholson, like this smile. That's really, really, really. Yeah, it is, and he said no, go ahead, and he knew that I was never going to use it as a shock effect, but that it really fitted in the movie, and it really does, and it's kind of unexpected, but as they're seeing those people relax on the pickup trucks, what they still did in those days, watching on the big screen, and to be honest, I had never seen it on a outdoor theater anyway, the movie, and it's such a different experience to see that particular movie on such a big screen. It is an emotionally different experience, and I thought that would fit right in with this. It's like it's something unexpected might happen, and it did, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, then let's quickly talk about the fact how much Hollywood has changed in the past 25 years. I mean, a film like Twister nowadays would be done completely differently, or it wouldn't be done at all. I'm not sure. What's your take on this?
No, actually, yeah, I have a definitely take on it. They are going to make a Twister F5 or so. I think that's in the works, at least. I don't know if they're ever going to make it. And of course, it will be all digital. And it will be, to me, to make that movie, this becomes a comic book almost immediately, because it will have a comic book feeling. And I think so many movies are now so destroyed by visual effects. I think they make the visual effect the main attraction in the movie, and an effect can never be the attraction. That to me is a very sad situation in today's movie making, that even TV series they're using visual effects now and digital effects, and since when is that necessary? But it is they save money in shooting time maybe. But of course, it's not much cheaper in the digital world. It is, cheapest when we did it for the first time. But to me, it kind of. I always leave those movies completely cold, left them. I don't get a single emotion in those movies ever, and it doesn't matter how magical those effects are. That's what it is. It's just a magical effect made by other people. This is also a thing. It's always made by an army of people, and you are not really anymore participating to a degree that you could influence it. It's ultimately certain things will have to happen the way they have to happen. And I think most importantly, I think it becomes like, it makes story writing, script writing come a little bit of a misnomer, because from the beginning that a movie is set up with becoming like a so-called tentpole movie or summer movie or comic book movie. I mean, kids are liking it because they still they watch those animated movies on TV as well, and fully digital games. So for that, it's not so. I understand why they like it, but they ruin it. I think they will lose a huge part of the audience by the main viewer is not interested anymore. I mean, I'm actually lost a lot of interest in seeing definitely that type of movie. So it's I still see little movies. I see little independent movies and things like that, and there are some really good independent series that are really much better than who would normally never had the chance to be made, and now because of streaming, can be made for really low budgets, but they will have at least they can show their voice and let their voice be heard. But I think I think the 70s and 80s, and then it started going downhill very quickly after that. I mean, it's really, in today's world, I mean, I saw Mulan the other day, and it left me totally cold. And I loved the animated movie. I was involved in the same movie in Milan. I was there for 5 months, and I wanted to have a much different version, a much more realistic version of Milan, and not an effect-driven movie. And when I saw the movie, I felt like every shot in that movie I have seen in other movies before. Either Crouching Tiger, a lot of that in Crouching Tiger, but multiple other movies, they all have the same shots, the same effects, and there's no emotion in those movies. There's zero emotion. I mean, no matter how good, first of all, the actress, it's really hard to act in front of any type of green screen when there's nothing around it, because a lot of them are process shots, and it is that kind of ruined acting as well, by the way. The more green screen there is, the more blue screen, also for the TV series, it is the more cold the actors are in regards that they cannot relate to anything before them and behind them. They have no idea of depth, how far away the other people are, and what they are doing, and how they respond. So they're completely going blind, and you cannot act blindly. That's just impossible. And unfortunately, that's happening now nonstop, and studios like it. They don't care. It's an unfortunate thing, and I don't know if that can ever be recovered. I mean, only by smaller independent movies. I think that might be the only way out. Big movies are only money movies. They don't care really what it looks like, and Mulan is not a really interesting movie. It's really actually boring, but it will make money, So they don't care anymore what in the old days when, and not even that old days. The story itself was a key element in the movie. If the story doesn't come across, you cannot tell a story, an emotional story with basically storyboards. Because that's what it looks like. It's all made with storyboards. And storyboards is as distant as you can be from the real thing. And because in storyboards, even the acting is over the top. So I'm not too hopeful, unfortunately.
Do you think those changes in Hollywood are a reason why you've had more difficulties in getting new projects off the ground?
Yeah, because they really, and I never wanted to become a comic book movie. I'm not interested. I cannot do it. I've seen too many of them, and I really feel like the magic of movie making is then disappearing. The magic of movie making is not in storytelling. It's basically in the digital world, and the digital world is a world where there are so many voices and so many people taking part in a shot, and sometimes there are like 75 people working on one shot every day, a little it's like imagining a painting that is made by 75 people. It doesn't look very good. It's like it doesn't have much personality, and that's what's really missing. It's going to have a complete lack of personality.
Are you working on something at the moment?
No, I just help some younger directors. I think it's might be the best thing to do, and it's important that in the United States, especially, that also people of color get a much bigger voice in the movie making process. Latinos and blacks and Asian and this. It's always been such a narrow-minded, wide view of the world, and I think that is very Caucasian, not very American Caucasian. It's very different with Europe. I have to say, but it is a very limited point of view, and it is basically only geared towards business. And I think that the new stories, the new worlds that we don't know anything about, and it has to involve, of course, also women directors, women producers. It's happening slowly, but it's still really slow. I mean, the Academy is still white, mostly male, and there are nowadays very desperate to hire more people, to get more people in it, but it has to be they have to do it in the right way. You cannot just also bring people in who are not talented at all. You have to stimulate them. You have to start teaching them first. You cannot just hire more people and not knowing how to work. I think educationally, that is, those groups and women have never been involved in film schools and internships in studios and little independent movies. It is getting better though, but it's still way behind.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one final question, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I found an interview that was released around the time of Speed, and there you said that when you decided to become a director, it was because you often shot action sequences, and you sort of had the idea that you could probably make them more exciting, and that you would want to prove yourself that sort of you could do more with this genre. So when you look at your films, do you feel that you've succeeded in what you set out to do?
I think I did, and I think that I can see the response to it in other movies, how things are shot. They're trying, definitely on big movies, they're kind of not copying, but definitely of influencing how action scenes are shot. That's for sure. And they're trying to really get the actor a little bit more involved and not so much cutting back and forth. There's always, a way that you'll run into limitations, but the limitations can be based on not enough time to do it, not enough money, or the studios don't want to spend it, or I understand all that, and so you have to deal with that because that's how life is. But I think that especially, but like what for instance you see, in movies like Die Hard and October and Black Rain and Lethal Weapon, those movies, if you see how they are filmed, they are already there. That it is the basis for all the way I see those scenes is there very clearly, and quite often, those scenes have been shot by me almost independently from the movies. There's not, there's like quite often, for instance, like that scene in Die Hard where the helicopters come through the city and go to the top of the building. That's, that was shot in 2.5 hours, and there's 24 or 26 cameras, I don't remember. And then the director, it was so complicated that the director was really, if we put him in a trailer and watching the videos, I mean, there's no way because it was so complicated with having the building had to be lit from all sides, the roof had to be lit, there were actors on the top, there were the helicopters through that whole area in Beverly Hills had to be completely locked off, and helicopters had never flown through a city, and they were totally afraid. And we got, so lucky that they let us do 2 takes. They were freaked out after take 1 when they saw the helicopters, way below roof level flying through the. And it was. I can understand. It is really overwhelming to see those big helicopters fly through buildings. I mean, in between buildings. It is like, and these are not visual effects. These are real helicopters and real noise. So the noise is like 10 times as loud as when they're up in the air. So it is all like, and then all the actions had to be combined. And so I kind of, and I can, with Paul Verhoeven, he always let me do those things through those bigger scenes, like in Basic Instinct, those action scenes. And because we had a very good understanding he trusted me fully, because all I wanted to do was like not only do the best I can, but to make his movie look as good as possible and make it effective. And not only the look. Sometimes you cannot make it. It's never about prettiness. No, the look of the film has unfortunately changed from an involved camera to a passive, pretty image camera, and that to me I never liked. To me that's too easy. I really get bored with endless sunset shots and sunset, and I've really seen that too many times in my life. It is kind of the roughness of life is not necessarily the most important part of life. I think that it might be the most relaxing, but it's not how really life happens. It's a rougher world out there, and I like it to be rougher. I'm never trying to smooth out things. I mean, I'm purposely quite often make it rougher in the camera and in the lighting. And yeah, I still think sometimes I think at night about a scene. Oh, it would have been good to do it this way and that thing. But I mean, it's good to have these ideas still in your head. So it still keeps me occupied in a way at night, but in a good way. So I'm not really. I feel like I lived at the right time. I mean, at a time where Hollywood was more interesting still, and before it started being taken over by technology. So that was great. Some risks were still taken. Now there's fewer and fewer risks taken in the studios, and it's becoming a world a little bit that lost my interest a little bit. But I still look at older movies all the time. So the film is always in my life, has been there all the time. But
yeah, well, I would have loved to see another Jan de Bont movie like Stopping Power, or
that would have been good. It was really actually my Mulan would have been so much better.
I can imagine.